Hey guys, I'm that boy Kyrie here, and on today's episode I will be covering Imperial Reforms before the Revolutionary War. Okay, so remember that whole national debt thing I was talking about before when I was talking about the legacy of the French and Indian War? Well, George Grenville, who was the Prime Minister of England, he started to pass a bunch of crazy acts that increased the taxes in the colonies because he realized that people in England were paying 5 times the amount of taxes as the colonials, and he saw that to be unfair. In the year 1764, he passed what was called the Currency Act, which made all paper money illegal. This helped Britain because the money that was now to be given to people was to be worth more than the money that was previously had. And this pissed off a few of the local governments because, they already had paper money established, and so they had to redo their whole entire currency system. It also made some strippers angry too, because you have coins getting thrown at you. It's pretty awful. Grenville also passed this thing called the Sugar Act of 1764. What the Sugar Act of 1764 basically did was it put 3 pence of taxes per gallon of sugar, okay? Which kind of screwed over a lot of merchants, including John Hancock, who will become very, very important later on. Anyway, these merchants had previously made a lot of their money by smuggling in French molasses. Molasses is sugar, for those of you who didn't know. And basically, what this act also did was it also tightened up the enforcement, unlike the earlier Molasses Act of 1733. So, of course, what the merchants did was they started bribing officials so they could smuggle in these goods. If you were one of those merchants who didn't pay the officials off, then you were kind of screwed because
they see me rolling, they hating, patrolling and trying to catch me riding dirty, 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 trying to catch me.
I'm sure all y'all remember that song from like 5 years ago. That was live. These acts created constitutional conflicts between the British people and the American colonies. And you see, one of the reasons why was in Massachusetts, in the Constitution of Massachusetts stated that all taxes should come out of the needs of the people. And because the British people were in charge, this tax of the Sugar Act wasn't from the needs of the people, and it wasn't helping them. So they argued that it should be unnecessary and that it should not apply to them. Another thing that happened in the 1760s that made it kind of different was that, they had these things called Vice Admiralty Courts. Okay, and basically what had happened was, with the Navigation Acts, people who were tried for violating the Navigation Acts were often acquitted because they'd have local common people courts, and they'd have some friendly people, be the jurors or whatever. And with these Vice Admiralty Courts, it was run by Britain, and so people would be found guilty. And now the Vice Admiralty Courts had power over people who violated the Sugar Act, causing more people to, become arrested because of this. John Adams, who was against these Vice Admiralty Courts, fought against them and said that they treated Americans as being below Englishmen. Alright, now on to one of the biggest imperial reforms that I'm sure you guys heard in 8th grade U.S. history. The Stamp Act of 1765. The Stamp Act created a tax on all legal documents, such as court documents, on all deeds to the land and contracts and things like that, and all other printed items. And what this did was it was supposed to help raise money for Britain, to send over troops to America. But many people in America, many of the politicians there, they opposed the Stamp Act, and they did not want it to happen. Before before passing the Stamp Act, Grenville realized that there might be some Americans opposed to it. So he went to the House of Commons, which is inside of the British Parliament, okay, which is composed of House of Commons and House of Lords. Okay, he went to the House of Commons and he was all like, "Yo, is there anybody who says that they don't want the Stamp Act?" And nobody opposed the Stamp Act. Nobody was like opposed to it because none of them were American colonists. Okay. Benjamin Franklin had proposed to Grenville that he allow representatives from America to be inside of the Parliament. Okay? And he said that basically, if you're going to tax us, we deserve representation too. Okay? And a lot of people inside of the House of Commons argued against this. The people who argued against having American representation argued that the colonials already had what was called virtual representation, because there were some people who had some vested interests inside of America, as traded with them or whatever inside of England, and so they had virtual representation. The problem with this virtual representation was that virtual means almost, and like we all know, almost doesn't count. I mean, just think about this for a second and how serious this is. It's like if you went to prison, okay, and you got inside the cell with this dude named Big Bubba, okay? And now Big Bubba's all like, "Yo, bro, it's okay. I'm virtually not going to rape you." Like, no. That means he's almost not going to rape you, and then he does rape you. That's not okay in any way, shape, or form. And so naturally, this sparks some rebellion, okay? Because it's almost as if the Americans were metaphorically raped by the Big Bubba that was the British Empire. For more on this rebellion that started to occur after these acts were passed, stay tuned for the next episode of History, where I'm going to go over some of the rebellion that started to happen before the Revolution, and I'm going to cover people like the Sons of Liberty and John Hancock and John Adams and stuff. And that's it for today's episode. I'm That Boy Kyrie here, as always. Follow me on Instagram and Snapchat at That Boy Kyrie. Peace.